Today on Locked On Red Wings, Detroit snaps their 6-game losing streak and beats Jeff Blashill in his homecoming with the Tampa Bay Lightning 7-4 in what was just an offensive explosion for the Detroit Red Wings. So stay tuned. Locked On Red Wings.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's the host of Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Before we get into the episode, though, Scotty, I don't know if the people who are watching us on YouTube, and for those who are listening, I'll describe it to you, but you may notice a little bit something different in the background of my shot right now. And there's a hockey stick in my background that is a game-used Dominic Kubalik hockey stick. And if you stay tuned until the end of the episode, I'll tell you what that stick's all about. So stick around. But yeah, Scotty, what was that? What were you going to say?
That's what we call a teaser in the biz.
Oh, baby. Red Wings won 7-4 over the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight in what was an unreal performance by the Red Wings, something we haven't seen out of them in a long time. And honestly, you know, I was there, and one thing I learned very quickly, Scotty, is it's very hard to watch the game analytically when you're there in person. Like,
I've always maintained that. I say that all the time when I talk about like Tigers games that I attend to. Like I will literally rewatch games that I like attend on TV before doing episodes, breaking them down, because it is so different. It is so much more difficult to analyze a game and like really break it down. When I guess maybe it'd be easier if you were like
I was high up. I was
yeah, but I'm talking like
TV
press
camera,
box, like high up. You know what I mean? Like I think like then it would be like easy, but from like the bowl, I feel like that would be pretty difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all just like the field of vision and everything, and the angle you're at is different.
It's hard.
But you know, I even made a point to put my phone away. I didn't tweet at all about the game during the game, a little bit during the intermissions, but just because I wanted to watch the game. And I wanted to be able to enjoy the game too and not be distracted by Twitter constantly. Although it's funny is I was constantly checking because I have the push notifications, and I promise we'll talk about the game at some point. But I have my push notifications turned on for the Red Wings, and I'm so used to getting tweets about goals before they happen. So that every time my phone vibrated, I was like, did the Red Wings score? I'm like, oh, I'm here in person. Like it's my buddy Troy, we were together. He's like, Brian, it doesn't get more live than this. So like you're not going to get a tweet before they score unless it's scripted, which we've had that conversation. So
hey, hope he didn't score, man. That's all I got to say.
But yeah, it was a great game. And honestly, in the first, the Tampa Bay Lightning scored on a beautiful shot. A minute and a half into the game, and I was like, here we go. It's going to be one of these. But then they went down early on a 5-on-3, and they killed it off. And from there, the Red Wings gained momentum. I think at one point they were outshot 11-0, and they finished the period. Shots were 15-3 in favor of Tampa. They dominated. At the end of that first period, Scotty, they had a 78% share of the expected goals for percentage in the first period at even strength, and their Corsi was a little bit lower. Because that's just pure shot attempts raw. It's not, then it's not weighted, but it was a 52% share. So they started the period without a shot for like the first 11 shots of the Tampa Bay Lightnings. And they finished
almost
dominating.
Like 8 or 9 minutes.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was. I was in the same boat. I think everybody was. I think we were all like, oh, brother, like, here we go again, kind of a thing. You know, after the first goal, like you said, absolute beauty, by the way, like beautiful, beautiful shot. But yeah, man, like I think that just the turnaround in that period was wildly impressive. And then obviously carrying that over into the rest of the entire game was unbelievably impressive. And I was so happy to watch this game. This was so enjoyable and so fun. And And there was so much in this game that we've been talking about during this losing streak about like, oh, they need to be better at this and they need to, you know, play 60 and this and that. And they just did like everything. Like this was such a well-played hockey game by this team. And it really did start with once they killed the 5-on-3, man, it was like a switch was flipped. I almost said a flip was switched. A switch was flipped. And like this team, it was like a completely different team pre and post 5-on-3 penalty kill there in the first period.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the second period was I thought it was Tampa Bay played pretty well in the second, but the third was back the Wings playing very aggressive hockey. But I think the biggest thing in this game, Scotty, was just the amount of scoring that was done. And it's something very refreshing. Obviously, 2 of those were empty net goals, but it's something we haven't seen out of the Detroit Red Wings in quite a while.
Did we both take the over?
We both took the over, yeah.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. I have to go back and listen. I know you did. I can't remember on myself, but I'll just say I did.
I think we both did. I think you're right.
I'll just say I did just in case. You know, I don't want to get.
We definitely don't have evidence if you didn't.
Not if I delete the episode off the internet.
Right.
I can do that. I have that power. But the offensive explosion that was had, and Brian Elliott didn't have a great game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. There was probably at least 2 goals, and 1 for sure, but at least 2 that he really wanted back in this game. But, you know, the Red Wings were swarming in the offensive zone. They still weren't great at breaking across the blue line, but they played aggressive on the forecheck down beneath the goal line. So when they did dump and chase, they did win a lot of those battles and created opportunities and set up in the offensive zone. And then defensively, they weren't scrambling and collapsing down in front of their net nearly as much. I saw quite a few good defensive plays from Wallman, Olli Maatta, who had a goal. Sider made a couple great plays. So I thought the team as a whole played really hard hockey against Jeff Blashill and his homecoming. Not to say that was the reason why. It might have been part of the reason why, but it was just a beautiful game to watch. The Red Wings played, I thought, their best hockey. And like you said, complete hockey game in a long time. I mean, if not the first, not a whole 60 minutes, at least 50 minutes of that game since the 10-minute mark of the first 8,
sure.
When they killed off that penalty kill, it was on, and they played so well.
They really did. And I was at a point again, like where I was just, you know, as the game went on, I was like, when is it going to come? Like, when is the fall off going to happen? Like, when is this going to catch up with us? Are they going to get tired? Are they going to get gassed? And they just didn't. And they really, really pressed the entire game. I thought that this was a really, really solid defensive effort by the forward group specifically. You know, we talk about how the defensemen aren't all like 100% responsible for bad defense, right? And I think that the forward group had a really solid defensive game. I don't know if it was a game plan thing or what, but they were aggressive like they were the first time we played Tampa. You know, we talked about it. The first 2 periods, there was such an aggressive forecheck. And then, you know, in the third period, it just, whether it was stamina or what, just kind of like slipped away. And in this game, it didn't. And they just had like a solid forecheck for 2.5 periods, really outside of the first, again, like, you know, 8, 9, 10 minutes in the first period. Besides that, they were really solid, but aggressively solid defensively as a forward group. And that was, I think, honestly, maybe my biggest takeaway from this game.
So, like, I want to talk about the forward lines in segment 2.
Yeah,
but before we get into that, I do just want to say overall that, like, one of the things that's crazy to me, given how much success the Red Wings had today, is how much they rolled the lines. You look at the time on the ice breakdown at even strength for each line, and when Larkin left the game hurt for a little bit, one of the lines got mixed up. But the line of Michael Rasmussen, Dylan Larkin, and David Perron played 8 minutes together. Sundqvist, Suter, and Kubalik played 7:52. Raymond, Kopp, and Ernie played 8:01. And then your fourth line of Veleno, Soderblom, and Berggren played 6:55. So there is 1 minute and 5 seconds of ice time separation between your fourth and your first line. That is not a lot. And that's basically unheard of on most NHL teams. Now, some antagonists would say that just proves the lack of talent that the Red Wings have, is that their top lines weren't getting that much minutes. But, like, rolling your lines like that, you just beat one of the most talented teams in the NHL by 3 goals. Like, and outplayed them pretty heavily for a lot of the game. It's just, I'm not trying to they just came off a 6-game losing streak. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they're going to make the playoffs after all. I know better than that. But I'm going to sit here and enjoy the win and look at the numbers that back up what we saw at the eye test and go, wow, they played a really damn good game against a really damn good hockey team.
Absolutely.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation, get into the offensive lines, because I thought the offensive lines, especially that top line and probably that second line as well, deserve some kudos. Got to talk about goal scorers as well in this game. Fourth line? All of them deserve a little bit of kudos in this game. But first, got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and maybe the NFL playoffs. If you're a Lions fan, you're just not barely on the outside looking in.
Born pride, baby.
I'm going to start bringing Kool-Aid to these recordings. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are breaking down the victory. It feels nice saying the win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, 7-4. Your second win over division rival, one that's right above you in the standings, but also just one that normally beats you up. I mean, you look back at last year, and they just routinely would beat the crap out of the Red Wings. And this year, they've put up a good fight against them. So it's just really nice to see. Let's talk about
even period. That's just one of the premier teams in the NHL. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, yes, obviously the history and like the lack of success before, this season is definitely something to point to. And it's definitely a great thing to see, that turnaround that probably comes with development, but just in general, just taking it to one of the best teams in the league, period. When, history aside, is awesome.
Okay. So Scotty, I'm going to say a combination of words. All right, we're going to play a little game here. I'm going to play a combination of words. And then
that's usually called a sentence. We call that in the business.
Did you learn that in journalism school?
I didn't.
I'm gonna say a combination of words here. And you're going to tell me the first word that comes out of your mind in reaction to that combination of words.
Got it.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Michael Rasmussen, first line center.
Not crazy. Okay, no, here's my thing. Like, Larkin is 1C. Like, let's calm down.
Yes. We're just joking around.
Yeah, for sure. But this game was let's just talk about the first line. Like, that was let's just talk about all the lines, man. Like, what a game. Like, for real, what a game that was. And like you said right before break there, like, it really was a crazy, like the last 6 games in the losing streak, and even leading up before that with all the injuries and stuff, we've been playing like revolving door with a lot of these lines so often. And this game was, what was it? Larkin, Rasmussen, Perron was top line. And at the beginning of the game, Rasmussen was mostly in the wing and whatnot. But then as the game went along, not that Larkin wasn't still center most of the time, but they would run sets, or like they would have certain zone entries where Larkin would be more of like the wing and Rasmussen was the big body in the middle, and it worked. And they got a ton of production out of that. Did they both have 3 points? Did Rasmussen have a goal and 2 assists, and Larkin had
2 goals? He had 2 goals and 1 assist, because remember, he got that empty netter at the end.
Oh, right. Yeah. So like just insane production from this line that I'm not sure going into the season, like when we were doing our like preseason, breakdown and like analysis and what's going to happen this year and what the lines are going to look like. I don't think anybody had on their bingo card in October that Larkin and Rasmussen would be sharing top line duties together at some point this year. And by the way, it would work beautifully against one of the best teams in the NHL. And so, yeah, like, again, like, that was very much a joke. Larkin's obviously the 1C on the team, but it's really cool to see Rasmussen just take these strides forward and really start to utilize his size and his intangibles more and more. And You know, even sliding over to the wing for part of this game, like, was still
good
really
there
effective.
too.
And yeah, the more versatility, the better, as we like to say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think on a true contender he's a number one center. I think probably not on even on
No,
this
of
team.
course.
He's obviously not number one center, but he's shown that he is a lot more than what people thought he was, and that's why. I mean, Michael Rasmussen is like the perfect example of being patient with a player's development. I mean, he was drafted 2017. He's in his fourth or fifth full year as an NHL Red Wing, as a Red Wing, and this is finally the year where he figures it out. He's gone on stretches where it's looked like there's potential, but this entire season so far, he's looked good, and partially due to injury, but he has climbed the roster in terms of where he's playing, and he hasn't looked over his head at any single point. In fact, and during the 6-game losing streak, he's been one of the few players that's actually looked consistently at least decent in games. When they were down bad, he looked like the only player who was out there who knew what he was doing.
His role has improved, or grown, I guess I should say, like tenfold since the season started. Yeah. And like, that's not to say, like, we at the end of last season, we talked about how he was taking strides and, what we could expect maybe more steps forward taken this year, but he has had a very, very solid season. And, that was obviously tonight was just awesome. Like, that's just that was a really, really solid performance. And again, like, that whole top line was just really effective. And then, like, we can just move into the other lines if you want. I mean, first off, fourth line was like the most fun line ever. That was just like all the like what?
I just want to, you want to go to the fourth line because I have another one, another thing for you. So get this: the Corsi for percentage for the fourth line in this game was 14.29%. They had 1 shot attempt for and 6 shot attempts against at even strength when they were on the ice. 14%. Their expected goals for percentage in this game, despite only having 1 shot attempt for, was 67%. Because you know what that 1 shot attempt for was? It was the Brian Elliott turnover to Joe Veleno, finding Elmer Soderblom wide open in front of the net. So despite getting outshot attempted 6-1, they had a better quality shot attempt percentage because of the fact that that 1 shot was a goal. Isn't that just hilarious?
Love it. I love
love
it.
To see it.
Well, that was just optically, like, going into the night. That was just the line that a lot of people were looking at. Like, that's going to be a really, really fun line because it had the Bergeron, Veleno, and Soderblom. Like, that.
Really young.
That's just such a fun, young, up-and-coming line. I would love to see that be the fourth line for other games. I obviously, like you said, they got outshot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't end up working for the long haul. But I mean, it's fun. It's fun to see all those names written down next to each other on a piece of paper. That's for sure. But I more so, even like Elmer specifically, obviously the play you talked about, but he is like more and more just showing how effective he can be on the defensive side of the puck. Like, just poke check city. And it's just because he's just so big. And when that is like heading directly, like, head on at you, you just like don't know what to do. And he puts his arms out and then he gets even bigger. Like, it's one of those things that is an intangible, and it's what makes him so unique and special. And it's very, very cool to see him just, like, especially going into the corners. Like, he's getting a lot more effective, and there's more and more poke checks and takeaways and intercepting passes and whatever from him lately. That fourth line was fun.
That, and you talk about Elmer specifically, all the advanced statistics back you up in that, except for Corsi. If you're talking relative, Corsi relative is the only one that reflects negatively on him, which again is shot attempts. So relative to when he's on the ice, the Red Wings generated more shot attempts for when he was off the ice. But then when you go in deeper and you start adding more and more layers to it, so if you go to Fenwick, and which Fenwick removes blocked shots out of the equation, now he is a positive 4%. If you go to just plain shots for percentage, like just pucks that made it to the net, Elmer Soderblom was a positive 29.76%. Now, granted, that's 3 shots to 1, not a great ratio. But then you go to expected goals for percentage, which is the quality of the shot attempts taken. He's a positive 22% in this game. And again, not on a lot of shot attempts. There weren't a lot of shot attempts because he didn't get a lot of ice time. But, when he's out there, he is actually having a positive impact. That's what the point of the relative statistic is to show when he's on the ice, what is the team doing and what is the team not doing. And the team produces more quality scoring attempts or shooting attempts, rather, when he's on the ice, at least in this instance, in this game. But it's something that we have seen since coming off of injury / Grand Rapids stint, is that he has kind of somehow, despite being hurt, is playing a little bit more defensively responsible, and it's showing in the offensive zone. And obviously you got a goal in this one because Brian Elliott, he's going to want that one back. But, it's nice to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just continue to be impressed. Like it's almost like you can see him like developing and growing on the ice. And on the defensive side of things, especially, it's just, I think it's becoming more and more apparent. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to go to another break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this conversation. We still got to talk about a couple other forward lines. I want to give some kudos to some defensemen who I thought played well. Spoiler alert, one of them is Philip Perron. And then obviously we got to talk about Ville Husso, of course. Oh, and hockey stick. So stay tuned. Locked On Red Wings. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every single state, even in states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. Your friends can tell, your coworkers can tell, even your parents can tell. Everyone can tell. So what makes you think that law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. And driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Scotty, you have a love story you want to give out about Pius Suter. You were talking about it in the pregame that you're just absolutely in love with this man.
I had no clue where you were going with that. I was like, what on earth is this dude talking about? No, I thought that the second line was just something else that I wanted to bring up. And yeah, I mean, Suter had a phenomenal game. I thought that he was incredible in this one, honestly. And just I wanted to just highlight that second line as a whole, because I think that he had a lot of the reason to do with that. And I think there was at one point in the season where we were early on and whatnot, that we were legitimately talking about like Suter's role on the team going forward. And people were talking about like, oh, he might be like the extra skater and be like healthy. And obviously this is one game and whatnot, but really I think that they have far bigger issues going forward than Pius Suter as it stands right now. And I think that he's had some pretty impressive games of late.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I completely agree with you, but I feel like the only line that really didn't pop out to me was technically the second line of Kopp, Raymond, and Ernie. They are technically the second line. But that third line of Pius Suter, Oscar Sundqvist, and Kubalik.
It's technically the second by like time
technically on depth chart wise. Kopp's line was the second line. We've been saying that. Suter was the second line, but they played like they were the second line in this game. That's for dang sure.
For sure.
But I mean, I think it's kind of embarrassing for them, but the only thing noticeable that I could say that Kopp's line did out there was Adam Ernie's turnover to tie the game in the second period after the Red Wings had just scored to take the lead. That was a brutal turnover, and obviously that's going to be one that they want back. But, I mean, outside of that, again, offensively, I thought the forwards as a core played really, really well in this game. And it was really nice to see and really nice to see in person. I'm very happy that I win. Although I'll be honest, going into the arena, I was a little like, I don't know, man, 6 straight games. Now you're going to play Tampa Bay. But, man, they pumped them. Defensively, Scotty, is there anyone that stood out to you that you were just like, dang, they played well in this game?
Well, I mean, I think the one you alluded to earlier is like a really place to start with Hronek. But I thought Moritz Seider looked great. I know that's like, I don't know, maybe not like a super clickbaity thing these days just because he's the best defenseman on the team. But I thought Seider really stood out specifically. And then, yeah, Hronek just stays hot, man. Like he has figured out his role. He has figured out how to be an effective defenseman in this league, and he is just firing on all cylinders. Obviously, Maatta was good. The goal that he had was beautiful positioning that he took advantage of there. It was like an impressive performance really all around, man.
Yeah, I still like Jake Wollman a lot. I think he's really picked up his pace of play since getting a little bit of an increased role on the line. He had the second most ice time at even strength in this game. Phil Perron and Jake Wollman as a pair led the team in ice time and even strength with 16 minutes and 16 seconds and 16 minutes and 10 seconds respectively. And that's a lot of expectation to put on a defenseman, but he was great. He had an expected goals for percentage of 72.92% and relative Scotty. Jake Wollman had a percentage of 17.72. So when he was on the ice, they generated 17% more offensive scoring chances than when he was off the ice. I mean, he really shows, like I said, he shows flashes. He's still pretty inconsistent. Like he'll go through moments in the game where you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, that was nice. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, that was nice. Like that's not the ride of Jake Wollman right now, like an early Philip Perron. But I like him a lot as a piece who could still figure it out. Ben Sherratt, I actually thought had a pretty dang good game. I think Ben Sherratt and Moritz Seider together actually had a good game for once too. Mostly because it was a very physical game and they flexed that physicality a lot in this game. This game got chippy, but they were both standing up the players and, throwing their weight around a little bit, which was really nice to see.
Yeah, well, it's needed. I mean, we've talked about that during on a couple of games during this kind of losing streak and this downward stretch here, where the team has just been. I don't know if bullied is too dramatic, but they've just been out physical, and so yeah, it was nice to see. It's nice to see it get a little chippy and not get like out of hand in the sense that, it got chippy and then we were like, oh my goodness, please stop because we're getting pummeled. Like they actually, getting chippy and holding your own, I guess I'll say, was good to see. Yeah.
Yeah, there were only 4 players on the Red Wings that didn't have an expected goals for percentage over 50% in this game. That's how you played a good game, and you played it against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The team as a whole came away with an expected goals for percentage of 58.5. If you look at Corsi, which is just pure shot attempt value, then Tampa took away the edge. But quality of those shot attempts was Red Wings.
Hey, man, like this is a game that the first time you played them, you barely held on for dear life. You held on at the end of the game and went home with a victory. And now the second time you punched them in the mouth. Like you really took it to this team for 50, 60 minutes and just grinded out a victory. It was the fact that this is game 2, and upward trajectory, I guess, for the sake of that. It was really nice to see.
How about both of Dylan Larkin's goals being sharp angle goals? The
second one was crazy,
dude. I could not believe, because I was actually I was on the end where they shot twice, so I saw that go in and nobody reacted. Like it was a delayed response because people didn't think it went in.
Yeah, he just
yeah, but he's made he's made such almost a patent out of that, like that sharp angle goal from those left boards. He just the first one was really nice too, because David Perron get a nice little drop pass. That was actually an example of a great break-in. I'm watching the replay right now as we're recording this, and it was a nice pass across, and then David Perron breaks down the wing. He finds Dylan Larkin breaking down towards the middle. Yeah, just buries it. That is a great shot by Larkin. Obviously, Olli Maatta got his 3rd of the season, finding down low. I think Pewsuiter, right? Found him from behind the net. Michael Rasmussen got 2. A nice deflection, I believe, was his goal. And then he had an empty netter as well. I do want to point out the selflessness, because Larkin could have gotten his hat trick 2 times with the empty net. One, he was breaking up the middle and could have shot it from center ice, but saw David Perron had a better angle and fed it to Perron just to make sure they sealed it. And then later, when Michael Rasmussen was freeing away, Michael Rasmussen slowed down and looked behind him for Larkin, and Larkin just went like this. He waved forward and was like, just bury it. So the selflessness on not just Larkin, but Rasmussen part 2, that warms my heart. Like seeing the players, like it's not about my hat trick, it's about winning this hockey game. Like they didn't care about padding the stat sheet, they just wanted to win. Like that's a small detail to notice, but it speaks volumes about where the team is at in mindset. It's not about the individual scoring goals. It's about the team winning games. And that I appreciate the hell out of.
Couldn't agree more.
I miss any goal scores. I mean, Rasmussen 2, Larkin 2, Maatta, Perron.
I don't think so.
I feel like that's only 6. 2, 4, 6. Who scored? Who am I forgetting?
Oh, no, Soderblom.
Soderblom. We already talked about that, though.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at remembering things. It's just how I am. Ville Husso, I thought, played really well in this game, too. He did end up with a negative goal saved above expected because that fourth goal, it will admittedly say, was pretty weak. He should have had that one.
He was, yeah.
But he still faced 38 shots in this game. He gave them a chance to win against a really good hockey team. I thought outside of that one goal, he was on top of his game.
He's 2-0 against the Tampa Bay Lightning this year.
Yeah. Can't complain too much.
Yeah, not sure we can really find too many holes to poke in that. Yeah,
and just like that, guys, the Red Wings are 4th in the Atlantic Division again. I am kind of surprised, honestly, in the 6-game losing streak. I was like, I'm not going to look at the standings. I don't want to do that to myself.
Look, man, what did we say? Like these next few weeks are going to tell a lot. Like if we can get into mid-January with Bert and Fabry, and Verano will be back hopefully soon, relatively soon. If we can just I know 6-game losing streak is not exactly keeping your head above water, but if we can just maintain just staying afloat and then roll into, mid-January and hopefully through then the end of the season with a healthy squad. I mean, you're setting yourself up pretty nicely there. We just need to not turn around and lose 6 more after this game.
Well, and I mean, you look at the games that they won and the games that they've lost, right? So the separation, they're 4th in the Atlantic Division, but the separation is starting to be there. The 41 points is the Tampa Bay Lightning. You're 4th at 35. So it's like last year where the top and the bottom half of the division are really starting to separate. So like we've always been saying, Red Wings' only opportunity is the wild card. But while you're sitting 4th in the Atlantic Division, you're 3 points out of the second wild card, which the New York Islanders currently have. So your blessing and your curse in this situation is your overtime losses. You have the most overtime losses in the NHL. You have 7 overtime losses, and there's several teams with 6, but you have the most tied with the Philadelphia Flyers with 7 overtime losses in the NHL. And that's a blessing and a curse because, one, it means when you lose games, you lose in overtime, which is great because you're getting a point. But it also means that you're not winning those games, and those extra points could go a long way. So that's something that we spoke about, Scotty, early in the season, that this Red Wings team, if you're going to lose games, get a point. But I think the mindset of that was more about losing games where you shouldn't have won in the first place, kind of like the game against Washington. Instead, a lot of these losses are they blew the lead. Right. And they should have had a second point instead they had one.
Right. You learn very quickly when I guess just when your expectations for the team change that not all 1-point games are the same.
Yeah. Well, and it's okay, so you have 7 extra points because you lost in overtime rather than regulation. So you have 35 points. The Tampa Bay Lightning have 41 points, and that's because they only have 1 overtime loss, and they have 20 wins. The Red Wings only have 14 wins. So the Tampa Bay Lightning have 6 more regulation wins because instead of losing games in overtime, they just win. Win. And I'm not trying to say that the Red Wings aren't the Tampa Bay Lightning, but that's the bar that the Red Wings still have to pass. They have to learn to win those games and not lose in overtime. So while it's we're still seeing that progression in the end, I guess is where I'm trying to go with this.
For sure.
Still a work in progress. Let's talk about this hockey stick. So, as I said earlier, this is a Dominic Kubalik game-used hockey stick. It is not autographed. There is not a certificate of authenticity with it. But Matt Lutz, who is the Authentics manager at Hockeytown Authentics inside Little Caesars Arena's team store, hooked me up with this sick stick to give away to you fine listeners. I'm trying not to get it tangled up in my headphones here. And, I made it down to the arena today. I think it's a little bit short notice to do it for Christmas, a Christmas giveaway. So let's try and shoot for New Year's Day giveaway, a New Year, new hockey stick giveaway. We'll come up. We'll workshop the name. We still don't have the fine details worked out, so look for a tweet within the next couple days from us with the official rules.
It's a nice stick, though.
Yeah, it is. It's sick. I'm a righty, though, so I couldn't keep it. But anyways, one of you lucky fans is going to get it. Any final thoughts, Scotty?
We ball.
Yeah, absolutely, ball. We'll be back on Friday with a new episode. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.